نشست دوم بعد از ظهر امروز رو شروع میکنیم و سخنران اول آقای دکتر عباس منوچهری هستن. آقای دکتر عباس منوچهری استاد هستن در گروه علوم سیاسی دانشگاه تربیت مدرس و تألیفات متعددی در حوزه اندیشه سیاسی دارن. یکی از زمینه‌هایی که آقای دکتر بهش اشتغال دارن و در این زمینه آثاری رو منتشر کردن به نحوی مربوط به اندیشه‌های مارتین هایدگر هست و ایشون در شمار کسانی هستن که کوشش میکنن بین حوزه فلسفه و سیاست پل‌هایی رو برقرار کنن. عنوان سخنرانی امروز آقای دکتر منوچهری ملاقاتی این بار متفاوت، یک گرامر عارفانه برای همگرایی منطق الطیر عطار به عنوان الگویی برای همگرایی میان فرهنگی هست. Herr Professor Abbas Manouchehri ist eigentlich Professor an der علامه طباطبایی Universität دانشگاه تربیت مدرس Universität. Herr Abbas Manouchehri ist beschäftigt mit der Politikwissenschaft, kann man sagen, und er versucht lange Brücke eigentlich zwischen Philosophie und Politik aufzubauen. Und jetzt spricht Herr Professor Manouchehri über eine Begegnung, aber diesmal anders, kann man sagen. Vielen Dank, Herr Professor Manouchehri. Und jetzt haben Sie die Lage, kann man sagen. Bitte.
I'm pleased to present my paper at this moment. I do present the paper in English, and Farsi translation is also on the board. I mainly read from the text, but there are some peculiarities in terminology of منطق الطیر or the book that my paper is about it, that I will explain orally in the midst of my reading. I will explain those points to make the point as clear as possible as to what I'm trying to communicate here. Meeting again differently. A poetic grammar for convergence. The origin of the notion of convergence goes back to Laozi's meditations and Pythagoras' mathematics. All throughout the history, especially at times of serious crisis, poets, philosophers, mystics, and other great spirits of the time have tried to project some form of convergence to make a better world possible. In a way, one can say that the history of political philosophy is mainly centered and concentrated on the notion of convergence, even though the term itself is not used much, if any. I'm using this concept in a general meaning. I would not explain or say anything about the notion of convergence, that I use it here, trying to in a way show how it comes out of this book, the Conversation of the Birds. The question, however, is in recent decades also the idea of civilizational dialogue has been proposed for intercultural and global convergence. The question, however, is the method by which such convergence might be realized. In this article, it is proposed that the Conversation of the Birds, usually is translated as the Conference of the Birds, but I think conversation is closer to the content of the book. So I use a Conversation of the Birds for Mantiq al-Tayr, the book, a masterpiece by the Iranian mystic poet Fariduddin Attar Neyshaburi, can be used as a model for intercultural convergence. So I will try to, in a way, to show how this book or poem can be used for intercultural convergence. First, some introductory remarks. One of the main challenges of our era is violent divergence manifested in civilizational animosity. One of the main challenges of our era is violent divergence manifested in civilizational animosity and indifference towards the destiny of the victims of mass destruction weaponry used by the hatred capital of warmongers. In a similar historical situation in the 12th century, which was the era of the Third Crusade wars and Mongolian invasion of Iran simultaneously. At that time in 12th century we have both the Third Crusade wars and also Mongolian invasion of Iran. And Attar lived exactly between these two conflicts or wars or invasions or whatever we might call them. The great Iranian mystic Fariduddin Attar Neyshaburi, one of the first victims of the brutalities in this time, lived in between these two violent conflicts. Attar himself personally was one of the first victims, one of the first people who was killed by Mongolian invaders. So there is some historical signification maybe on this. Attar's mysticism. According to Professor Shafi'i Katkani, Attar as a poet had a kind of grammar of his own. Professor Katkani believes that Attar has his own grammar that we can maybe see as we go along here. Attar is also a renowned mystic with his magnificent imaginary poems and his doctrine of mystical transformative humanism. I have personally given this name to his mysticism, considering that now transformative phenomenology is basically talking about the same things that Attar was trying to say and do. This humanism is manifested in verses such as this: day and night, all that is. This is said to human beings, as Attar says. Day and night, all that is for you put on work. The heaven and the earth are the pictures of your beneficence and wrath. Obedience of the spirits are for your benefit. Higher than you, not possible. Look low, not at yourself. من فارسیش هم میخونم چون در ترجمه اونجا فکر نمی کنم باشه. خلد جانم هست. بله نه این اشعار رو میگم. خلد دوزخ عکس لطف و قهر توست، طاعت روحانیون از بحر توست. جزو کل غرق وجودت کردن، قدسیان جمله سجودت کردن. زان که ممکن نیست بیش از تو کسی، از حقارت سوی خود منگر وسی. Attar's humanism is centered around love and human gathering. As Jalaluddin Rumi has said, Attar traveled all 7 cities of love while we are still at the bend of the first valley. In Attar's teaching, the experience of love, which in Arabic Persian word ishq literally means one's attachment and belonging to another, is not a teleological experience, but a life experience, and a Leibniz in German of self-creating humanity. As such, this is the theme of Attar's allegorical masterpiece of Mantiq al-Tayr, or the conversation of the bird. Second, Mantiq al-Tayr. Attar's The Conversation of the Bird is one of the definitive masterpieces of Persian literature, in which the path towards human excellence is poetically pictured. As such, this is a book of ethics similar to that of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and at the same time it pertains to a theory of moral development which anticipates theories of moral development or morale and technique, as Lawrence Kohlberg has called it. This work, however, is in a way in a hermeneutic circle of interculturality, namely that as at this moment we attempt to have it as a guide for intercultural convergence, it already has become a transcultural work of art. In his 9 essays on Dante, Jose Luis Borges writes that anyone has ever been able to surpass one of the great figures of the Divine Comedy seems incredible. Nevertheless, this has been achieved by Attar's Mantiq al-Tayr. Theodore McCombs, an American writer, writes that from Rumi to Borges have drawn on Attar's vision of coherence in our divided world. Maccombs adds, after about 1 millennium, Mantiq al-Tayr still speaks to our moment of change and challenge, a moving and unsettling ideal from a very different but very relevant time and place. Mantiq al-Tayr is a book of dialogical mysticism, or one might say a mystical dialogue for convergence. It is a phenomenology of ethical experience for human transformation to excellence via conversation and convergence. The poem. Attar's masterful use of symbolism is a key driving component of this poem. Mantiq al-Tayr is a story of a journey of joining others to travel to one's own true excellency, which is lost in the world inflicted by diverging forces. In the foreword of her modern translation of Mantiq al-Tayr, Sholeh Wolpe, an Iranian-American poet, writes, "The parables in this book trigger memories deep within us all. The stories inhabit the imagination, and slowly over time their wisdom trickles down into the heart." خیلی تون که نمیخونم. چقدر مونده. The process of absorption is unique to every individual, as is each person's journey. We are the birds in the story. All of us have our own ideas and ideals, our own fears and anxieties, as we hold on to our own version of the truth. Like the birds of this story, we may take flight together, but the journey itself will be different for each of us. Attar tells us that truth is not static and that we each tread a path according to our own capacity. It evolves as we evolve. Those who are trapped within their own dogma, clinging to hardened beliefs or faith, are deprived of the journey toward the unfathomable divine, which Attar calls the great ocean. The plot. In the allegorical framework of the poem, the birds of the world gather together to seek a king for themselves. The wisest of the birds suggests that they undertake a journey to the court of the great Simorgh, the name which resembles a bird of stateliness. I should explain here the word Simorgh. Simorgh is a mythical bird in Persian history, literature, mysticism, all. Its equivalent in English is, and in European languages is phoenix, but it has much more than that. But the linguistic or terminological particularities here is very important. The point is that Simorgh literally means 30 birds, but it's one bird, but it means 30 birds. So as we go along, once we refer to Simorgh as the bird, and then the number of birds which finally reach this Simorgh are 30. So the story becomes very, very interesting, although it's allegorical, but it reaches a very sensitive point. So we should have that in mind. I will explain it, but as we get to the points that it should be clear which one we are talking about. The text itself is clear, but it's still important that we know that the meaning of the word and its implications and applications by Attar. At the beginning, the birds are identified by their species, and each species clearly indicates a human type. Each bird represents a human fault which prevents humankind from attaining enlightenment. The birds realize that they have to cross 7 valleys in order to reach the abode of Simorgh. These valleys are as follows. Valley of the Quest, where one begins casting aside all dogma, belief, and unbelief. Valley of Love, where reason is surpassed for the sake of love. Valley of Knowledge, where worldly knowledge shows to be insufficient. Valley of Detachment, where all desires and attachments to the world are given up. Valley of Unity, where one realizes that the truth is that of union, and that the beloved one pertains to harmony, multiplicity, and eternity. Valley of Wonderment, where entranced by the beauty of the beloved, the one becomes perplexed and steeped in awe. Valley of Poverty and Annihilation, where selfhood disappears into the universal unity. After hearing the description of these valleys, the birds who were at the first at first enthusiastic to begin their search, start to make excuses, but despite their anxiety, they begin the great journey. On the way, many perish of thirst, heat, illness, while others fall prey to wild beasts, panic, and violence. Finally, only 30 birds make it to the abode of Simorgh. So here, 30 birds, Simorgh, reach the place of Simorgh, which is the bird which they have been trying to reach its place. I have called it in English thirdiness, for Simorgh thirdiness. Third, a meeting this time differently. Finally, 30 birds, purified by their efforts, set foot on the mountain of Simorgh and gaze upon it. This is the heart of what Attar has been trying to say, and his humanism and mystical humanism is exactly here. Finally, 30 birds, purified by their efforts, set foot on the mountain of the Simorgh and gaze upon it. Astonishingly, they perceive that they themselves are the Simorgh, and that the Simorgh is each one of them and all of them. In the thirdness of the Simorgh are the sea birds, and in each bird is the Simorgh. As such, meeting the Simorgh is actually meeting one's own newly recreated self. There in the Simorgh radiant, these are according to Attar's poem. There in the Simorgh radiant, the birds saw themselves the Simorgh of the world with awe. They gazed and dared at last comprehend. They were the Simorgh, and the journey's end. They see the Simorgh, but at themselves they stare, and see a second Simorgh standing there. They look at both and see the two are one. That this is that this, the goal is wrong. Then, as they listen to the Simorgh's words, a trembling disillusion filled the birds. The substance of their being was undone, and they were lost like shade before the sun. Neither the pilgrims nor their guide remained. The Simorgh ceased to speak, and silence reigned. As Bayazid, another very famous Iranian mystic, as Bayazid, the mystic was alone, allowed in heaven to enter. This is how he expresses this experience of the simultaneity of being Simorgh and being Simorgh, or being thirdiness and thirdiness. In fact, the convergence has happened there, the oneness between all of the birds and the one has happened. It says, this is what Bayazid has said. Said he, O God, do unveil. Then appeared Bayazid from the veil. چو ره دادن بر عرش مجیدم، همانجا پیش آمد بایزیدم. ندا کردم که یا رب پرده بردار، ز پرده بایزید آمد پدیدار. Conclusion. In Jose Luis Borges, or Jose Luis Borges typifies that we are what we are looking for. In other words, the conference isn't really for would-be mystics, but for a world beset by materialism, fear, and self-righteousness, by a damaging individualism that celebrates getting one's own over the common good. As such, when invoked for and applied to intercultural relations, This story pertains, or this book pertains to the fact that as the multiplicity of teddy bears met their own identity, in the image of the embracing one, or Seymour, through convergence, multiplicity of cultures can become their true self in the actualized image of the tertipel culture through convergence. Jose Dario Martinez adds in this regard, or says in this regard, if the idea of or the desire for community is substituted to Seymour or to God, in both cases the substitution is not far-fetched. Possible answers to our current coexistential predicament: we are what we are looking for. Living together is what happens when we are collectively trying to figure out how to do it. Metaphorically speaking, here I have used Farsi and tried to use it for the Persian word for intercultural discussion. The word culture in Farsi is farhang. Farhang is carrying a head. Hang is movement, and far is to go ahead. So here, metaphorically speaking, and C is 30, and the word for color is rang. So this is what I have used as the conclusion here. Metaphorically speaking, as culture in Farsi is farhang, meaning carrying a head, C in Farsi means 30, and rang means color. Then one can say that we are converging journey of interculturality. Each culture, or each farhang, will be a C-rang, not one culture. As Attar tells us, all that you have uttered, all that you have heard, all that you knew, and all that you have seen, all of it from the very start is just the beginning of the fairy tale. Disappear. This room is not your abode. What matters is the essence of truth. When the true sun shines eternal, does it matter if there is an atom or here its shadow? Thank you very much.